Welcome to another edition of Diane's Kitchen. No, it's not a cooking show. It's a place where we sit down, have a cup of coffee, and talk to some interesting people. This morning is probably one of my most interesting people. As you notice, he's not dressed like most people dress, but this is who he is. And I believe you dress like this.
In case I fall down on my motorcycle. It saves my skin.
I meant do they still call these do-rags?
Yeah, bandanas, do-rags.
Bandana, okay. So he's not the kind of guy that you're going to see on the street that looks like you do, that dresses like you do. But there's a reason behind it. My guest today is Brian Cole. Welcome.
Thank you.
He is from Drummond, Wisconsin, but he hasn't always lived there. His life story is amazing. It is tragic. It is sad. It is anything you want to put to fill in the blank. And he spent a lot of years in prison. How many years in prison total?
27.
27. And how old are you now?
I just turned 54, so now I can no longer say I spent most of my life in prison. It's half and half now.
Wow. That's absolutely amazing. Today we're going to talk about prison. I've never been there. I've never spent time. Brian's been in all sorts of lockups, prisons, jails, anything. And it started when he was very young. Brian, quickly skip to how your first time in prison. How did you get there? Why did you get there?
I was 18. I had done lots of time up to that point in juvenile detention facilities.
Okay, why were you in juvenile detention?
Mostly just rebelliousness, drugs, running away from home, running away from the institutions I was locked up in, causing trouble while I was there.
So you didn't come from a lovely Ozzie and Harriet home life.
Not at all.
And didn't you say that when you were young, you were not accepted by your peers?
Not accepted by my peers, not accepted by my father, just not accepted by most people. I was, just the way I was small, short, had buck teeth, and so I was, bullied in school all the time and stuff. And the way my dad treated me, calling me a loser and nobody or nothing, beating me down all the time. I started hearing it so much wherever I went, whether it was school, at home, at church even, that I ended up allowing that to define who I was, and that's when I started acting out.
So your self-worth was almost non-existent.
Yeah.
Was it when you were in grade school that the high school boys made you their friend?
No, I was in 10th grade. I was 10 years old in elementary school when I met these kids smoking a cigarette in the tree line between the elementary school and the high school in Chippewa Falls. So,
and what drew you to them? And what opened their eyes and said, hey, here's a kid?
Yeah, well, I was out on the playground, and whenever I was out on the playground, I tried to walk the perimeter to stay out of the kids' eyes and hoping they wouldn't notice me and, beat me down, call me names, rip up my football cards, whatever it was.
Sure.
And I heard some kids call me over one day, hey, kid, come here. And I looked, and I seen a couple older kids in the tree line there where the high school kids go to smoke their cigarettes. And I went over there, and they handed me a cigarette, and they started talking to me. I didn't smoke up to that point. I knew what it was about. My dad smoked. But all I knew was, these kids were talking to me, and they weren't calling me names. They weren't beating me down. And I saw something there I hadn't noticed in years, which was acceptance. And that was the enemy's lure, and it got me hook, line, and sinker.
What did you end up doing? Where did that lead you first, that relationship with people who accepted you?
Well, it led me right into the dangerous game of drugs and pornography, and
they introduced you to it?
Yes.
How long did you hang around with these people?
For at least that school year and the next school year. Went from a cigarette, and a few weeks later they handed me something that looked like a cigarette, but it wasn't, and they told me to smoke it a little different. It was marijuana. And then sometime after that they showed me some pornography magazines, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. And, just one thing led to another. And we know how sin starts small.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how it is in life when we make those, I go to schools a lot and talk to students about choices. And I use that as an example. I give the students my story, and I hone in on that early part to show students how easy it is that when you make that one bad choice, because we make hundreds of choices every day, and those choices will eventually lead us to be a good person or a bad person. And once you make a bad choice, whether it's even unconscious bad choice, you don't even think about it, you just do it. It makes it a little bit easier next time to make your next bad choice, and on and on and on, until after a while, it's not even a choice anymore.
Well, especially when you have people that are encouraging you
Yes.
to make these bad choices.
Yes, and you feel good
Oh,
about
well,
yourself.
yeah,
And
because they accept you.
Yes,
And you're 10, 11
11
years old. That is just, as a mother, I think how absolutely appalling you were a sitting duck.
Yeah.
Absolutely. After these older kids were out of your life, how did you maintain this lifestyle that wasn't so bad because you were accepted? What did it lead you to?
Well, it led me to being the bigwig that I so admired in other people, and I went from being the bully to being bullied to being the bully. I became the person that I hated the most, and I don't distinctly remember making a decision at some point, but I do remember thinking to myself, now it's my turn, payback time.
Yeah, right.
And I became a bigwig basically with the drugs and the pornography in school, and cigarettes, and having money because of selling drugs even at that age. And my grandma and grandpa lived down the road with my aunts and uncles there, and my auntie had a clam thing in her bedroom. So my grandparents were so drunk all the time, I would skip school, go over there and steal money out of this clam. She had just tons of $100 bills, and this thing was her savings. And I'd go in there almost once a week and steal a $100 bill and skip school with some of my friends, and buy them pizzas and buy them record albums. Remember records?
Oh,
Okay, maybe
vinyl.
not. Especially picture discs.
Oh, yeah.
Then. And so I became the man. Everybody started looking up to me, and I was no longer that kid getting bullied and getting
kicked
looked
around.
down upon. I was the man. And boy, I latched onto that.
Did you graduate from high school?
I don't even remember being in high school, but people tell me I was at least in, I don't know, what is this, 10th grade or whatever. And I think I was, because I believe that was the first time that they brought dogs into the school and found marijuana in my locker, and I was arrested there. But that was probably the last time. I think I completed, 6th grade was the last grade I completed. After that, pretty much spent the rest of those years in juvenile detention facilities, and whenever they put me in a school somewhere, I'd get kicked out within 2 weeks.
Your father was like a lot of fathers, especially back then.
Mm-hmm.
Complete control, made you feel unworthy, stupid, all the negative things. Could you read him as to you're turning into this bully, this angry kid? Mm-hmm. Could you see him look at you differently, or did he still think you were a dumb, stupid kid?
No, he never treated me any different after I started getting into a lot of trouble, other than he became a private detective in my life. He followed me around. He'd had me followed. He was in with the cops, so he'd call the cops on me all the time. And he, I got his this file he kept on me after he died, and he was keeping records even. He'd lecture me for hours at a time, and he'd have tape recorders hidden while he was lecturing me. So if he catch me in a lie, I was talking about how was I doing in school? I was doing good, this, that, and then he'd bring it to the teacher, you know what I'm saying? And then he'd come back and I'd be punished for that. And so he didn't become any different, other than I think it almost seemed like he tried to make his life revolve around just busting me in things and following me around and getting involved in my life in that way. There was no positivity. It was all negative stuff. I hated him for that.
Well, yeah. Your mother, probably the sweetest, kindest, most wonderful person in the world. This had got to have been beyond difficult for her. I mean, to see your husband bully and do the things that your dad did to his child. How did she do it?
I don't know. Two things about my mom. I don't know if you ever had that in your home. And I don't know, when my dad was beating me down, at least there was physical contact and there was attention.
Mm.
When my mom would try to stick up for us once in a while, for me, then my dad would do either the silent treatment for
Oh,
a week
yeah.
or two
Oh,
at a time,
yeah.
or just leave
Yeah.
for a week or two. And I didn't know what was worse, because at least I was, getting attention, getting the beat down. When he gives us a silent treatment, it's like, here you're living in a house with your own father, and he's acting like you don't even exist, or like mom doesn't even exist. I know my mom was crushed, but at that time of my life,
Oh, no.
it was all about me,
Sure was.
and I wasn't thinking about my mom and what she thought about me. And it wasn't until after I got saved and was in a ERP program in the Chippewa prison, going through the treatment program there, where at one point we were in a victim impact section, and we had to have somebody that we negatively impacted in our life write a letter about how we impacted them. And I picked my mom, and she broke a record and wrote 13 pages, and it devastated me when I just dropped to the floor in my counselor's office when that letter came in, and I read it. So my mom got to the point in her life where, like I say, I was thinking about myself, and
Oh,
my
sure.
mom had her on top of the family
Sure.
issue. She had her problems with everything else going
sure.
on, and she got to the point in her life at one point where she felt like driving her car off a cliff one night, and
Exactly.
my mom doesn't think like that.
No. And to think that you
That was
you
because
helped
partly, yes.
take her to that point. I would imagine that letter was very cathartic for her. And it's really a shame that everybody can't write that letter.
Mm-hmm.
But how many prisons, juvenile detention centers, lockups were you in the 27 years?
Dozens.
So your first time you were in a facility, what was it and how old were you?
I'm not even sure. I was in so many things, but probably the first one that I remember was being put in a foster home. And the foster home was pretty cool at first.
Mm-hmm.
The guy, my foster brother, I think he was just a little younger than me. He was a drummer, and I was a drummer. And I had never played a drum set up to that point. I was a percussionist up to that point.
Sure.
And so it was my first time on a drum set, and it was cool because he had a drum set. The parents were not well off, but they had money, and our family really never did. So it was kind of cool. He was cool. My foster brother was cool. He had a drum set that was cool. My foster parents put me took me into drumming lessons, and it was like $25 an hour back then.
Ooh,
even.
wow.
And Denny Lester, I remember his name was, in Eau Claire, gave me the lessons, and so things were cool for a while. But then not even a couple of 3 months into being there, my foster dad came into my bedroom one night. I was 14 years old, and started rubbing up on me. So obviously I took off from there, and my rebelliousness and hatred for authority grew each time something happened in my life.
Oh, yeah. Somebody you trust
Yep.
all of a sudden betrays you.
Yep.
Prison life. By the time you went to prison, after the lockups, after the fosters, after the everything, were you pretty jaded by then, your first prison? And what did you go to prison for? And when the judge said, no, you're going to prison, not jail,
Yeah.
not juvie, but you're going to prison. Inside attitude had to be totally different than outside bravado. Do you remember the first time that this was serious stuff?
Yeah, I do. I was a fresh 18. I tried joining the military, the Army, 12 Bravo combat engineer. My mindset was not right. I wanted, my whole intention of going into the military was to be able to legally kill people.
Sure.
And so I tried, and I failed. I got almost through, I think it was a week or two before basic training, and I got kicked out. General discharge under honorable conditions. And once again, just another thing feeding the whole authority stinks.
Rejected again.
Yeah, rejected again. So went right back as soon as I got out, got right back into the drugs hardcore, used all the money I had saved up from the military to buy drugs and become a big dope dealer again. Got hooked up with a guy who was another druggie and hooked up with a girl who I had a crush on since school. We ended up getting married, and it was all bad. And me and the guy I was living with stole a bunch of guns from his dad for money for buying dope, and got arrested for that, did some jail time, got out, moved to Eau Claire, and this is when the feds sent their, what do you call it, a federal informant into the same, not only the same trailer court we were living in, but moved him in right next door to where we were, pulling a 1969 Dodge Charger, which is my favorite car. I don't even know if that was planned or not, but and a Harley Davidson.
Oh, sure.
And it was a big biker dude. And so,
and he was also FBI.
He was also, well, he was an informant that got pulled out of prison to work for them.
Oh, that's what you mean.
Yeah. So long story short, we got caught up in a federal sting operation, 1984, Eau Claire, Wisconsin. The feds came in and set up 3 sting operations, one for drugs, one for theft, and one for prostitution. We got caught up in a theft ring. Up to that point, I had never burglarized a home in my life, and I'm not justifying. I mean, I ripped everybody else off and robbed stores. But when I saw how easy it was to get money for chainsaws and TV sets and guns and microwave ovens and all that stuff, we started doing burglaries.
Sure.
Big time. The feds told us after we got arrested that we robbed more than 250 homes in 6 months. I'm an all-in guy. I think most people are, when no matter what in life, whether it's motorcycles or arts and crafts or whatever it is, if I'm going to get into it, I'm going all in. And that's how it was in the life of crime. I had to be the man. I had to be the best at what I did, and I was the best there. So
at this point, were you the boss?
I was the main guy in the theft ring, and out of the 54 people they arrested for that, I got the most charges. I also got a lot of charges for other people because I was one of the few. A lot of those people that were involved were just homeless and everything else and stealing things for money and had no vehicles to bring them in. So I was hauling stuff in for other people too and getting a cut off that. So I got hanged. I think I got let off pretty good, considering I was 18 and all these. I had
18.
Hundreds of charges on me. I had 17 federal indictments. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. But so all that stuff was scary at first. I was like, okay, up to this point, I had done time, and this is one of the problems still, a big problem in our juvenile system, is that they make time too easy for kids, even if they get time. I didn't mind being locked up as a juvenile because I had more access to drugs and girls at these places than I ever did at home. So it was like, go ahead, lock me up. I don't want to be at home.
Okay, back up. How did you have more access?
Almost all the places I was locked up in, and even Lincoln Hills back then, was co-ed. So the girls were there, the drugs were there, just like in prison. You think to lock them up to get them away from drugs, and all the drugs are in prison. Just depends on how much money you want to spend, right? So,
wow, Lincoln Hills, I know, was a disaster.
Yeah, so I knew prison was different, and I wasn't looking forward to it, but I don't remember being fearful of it. The only thing I distinctly remember being fearful over a little bit was when I was in Lincoln Hills Boys School. They'd pick out, I think it was 12 people every 6 months or every year. They pick out 12 people they think were probably going to end up in prison, and they would put them through that Scared Straight program in Green Bay Correctional Institution. Right. I was one of those. And I would also remember distinctly, I wasn't stupid. I knew these people could not touch me, and they're talking smack in your face and threatening you, all that, and I just laugh at them. You know what I'm saying? So I was mocking these lifers and stuff that were talking to me when they took us to that Scared Straight program in Green Bay. So I remember after I was sentenced to 10 years in prison over that. After I was sentenced and I was on the bus on the way to Green Bay, I was thinking to myself, man, I hope none of them dudes remember me because I was smart-mouthing them. You know what I'm saying? So that scared me a little bit. I was like, man, but other than that, I don't remember having any fear. I was so used to being in that culture anyway.
But you were used to being in lockups with kids your age.
Yeah. And Green Bay was no different. Green Bay was, I don't know if it's changed over time, but at that time in the 80s, the early 80s, Green Bay was for younger people and Waupun was for older people. So.
Why do you think they didn't mix the two?
Probably one of the reasons is because Green Bay back then was called Gladiator School, because young people, they ain't growing up yet, they ain't mellowed out yet, as to where, you know, even in the prison system, man, you grow up, you do a lot of time, you wise up, and you just mellow out. You know, you understand what doing time's about, and things get a little more comfortable in prison when you're around a bunch of people who've done time, or older people who have
Right.
mellowed out in their life.
See, that would be where my brain would go.
Yeah.
I remember in high school, I got a job. And, you know, in high school, everybody's your age
Yeah.
or within a couple of years of your age. Suddenly I had a job. I was working with, I don't know, adults that were doing the same thing that I was.
Mm-hmm.
And at first it was very difficult for me because, you know, in high school, if everybody wore this, you wore that.
Yeah.
You get out of high school, you get into, well, even in high school, you get a job, you realize, oh, look, everybody's dressed differently, everybody wears their hair differently. It's not that lockstep that you're used to in high school.
Yeah.
And to me, it was one of the biggest revelations I'd ever had. I would think, if I was in charge, I would put the kids in with the older guys, although I would imagine they could teach you a lot of horrible things that you hadn't
Right.
thought of yet. But now your attitude had become your defense shield.
Yeah.
You're not going to hurt me. Did you know you were getting harder? Did you know that if you once gave in, you'd lose?
I'd been getting harder all my life. And,
Right.
and as I think I've said, almost every time I was incarcerated or something would happen, or I tried the military and it failed, or I became better at what I was doing or whatever, I always blamed the system.
Mm-hmm.
I never blamed myself. Of course, you know, criminals and addicts don't blame themselves. Everybody else's fault.
Exactly.
So my rebelliousness against authority and blaming other people got worse and worse. But that, when I got arrested for that theft ring,
Mm-hmm.
that was the final straw, because up to that point, I had never robbed a home in my life. You guys created this thief. You're the one that hooked me up in the first place to get me to sell stuff to this place. It wasn't me. It's like, let me bring you there, and bring this stuff in, and we'll show you how this works for the federal informant. So everything was their fault. It wasn't my fault. They created this. So I remember that point in my life when I was 18, after that arrest, and I got charged and sentenced, and nothing came of this informant and all this other stuff. My rebelliousness toward authority was at its peak in life. Everything that happened up to that point was their fault, and nothing was my fault, and this was all about you. And it was at that point where the occult, the Satanism and stuff in my life was just kind of dabbling. But when I got into prison and I didn't have nothing but 23 hours a day, 7 days a week to sit in my room, that's when the enemy came in. And that's when the enemy said, you know, you've been kind of partially serving me all this time, and look what's been happening. You need to get all in. And that's when I got all in. And that's when I quit playing around and I became a full-fledged Satanist. And that's all I did during that time was study and memorize and do rituals and
What did you study? What did you memorize? How did you know how to do a ritual? Are there books on this?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
I had, and at that time there was really no rules on the amount of books you could have. So I had a pretty vast library of books on Satanism and the occult, books on all aspects of the occult. I pretty much went through every occult religion imaginable while I was in prison, and the worse it was, the deeper I got into it, because it was worse, like the Necronomicon. And I understand that it's pretty much a plaything. It was written as a fiction book, but to call down these great old ones, and the ultimate goal was to destroy the whole world. I mean, that's what I was about, man. I was just done with life. I was done with people, and I wanted destruction in everything.
Everybody disappointed you.
Yep. So I got hooked up in that, and I understood at that time, even that early on, that there was kind of a pecking order in prison, and most people get involved with some sort of gang activity in the prison. They join a gang, whether it's black gang, white gang, Mexican gang, Indian gang, whatever it is, just to be protected. And I understood that just me being involved with the Satanism and doing cursing rituals and destruction rituals, and people coming to me to have destruction rituals done on other people, I already had a name for myself just being that guy. People were afraid of me, so I didn't need to be involved. I was a one-man gang. And people after a while respected me also because I minded my own business. I was involved with the stuff I was involved with. And of course, us occultists, we had our own little clique too, and nobody really messed with us too much, So I had
You were
already
the worst,
established.
baddest dude.
I was the worst, baddest dude, I think, as far as the occult went.
Sure.
Yes.
You had that protection.
Yep.
You were in a group. You had a leader.
Well, after a while, there was nothing established in the prison at that time as far as having like religious groups and the chapels and stuff for those involved with the occult. But that's how hardcore I was, all in, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I understood that the Buddhists and the Hinduists and the Christians and the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Muslims and everybody else could go in the chapel and have their little rituals and stuff done, but there was nothing for pagans. That's when I started a battle against the prison system that lasted 6 years, and in the end I won. And to this very day, there are Wiccan pagan religious groups in every chapel in the Wisconsin prison system. And I established that. That's how hardcore I was. That's how all in I was.
When you are working for Satan, obviously you can, I don't know if you call it grow, you can get more involved.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a level at which you can't go any higher? Or does Satan take you deeper and deeper and deeper? I mean, if you've established, if you got the attitude, if you're, I don't know if you call it praying with people, but you were spreading the message. Is there a ceiling? Is there a glass ceiling in Satanism?
I don't think so. Fortunately, I was never into the deepest, darkest aspects of Satanism as far as like the underground brotherhood and stuff where they sacrifice people and all that.
Right.
Early in with these kids that I met up with, they were dabblers, and that's when I was first introduced to it. And they were sacrificing animals because, hey, the devil demands blood. Mostly that of young kids, and that's in my opinion, not just an opinion, but what I know about the occult. That's why abortion is happening today at such a high level. That's human sacrifice to Baal, and it still goes on today under that name, legally and legitimately. But back then, they were sacrificing animals, and I wouldn't do that because the only thing I have ever loved all my life were animals. So That's when I started cutting myself for blood for the rituals at a young age, and that ended up becoming an addiction. Cutting a self-mutilation, it became an addiction itself. But I don't think that there is a ceiling. I think the devil will have you grow and grow and grow and serve him until finally you die and you're his. There is no ceiling in that.
And bring as many people as you can
with you.
Yes,
ma'am.
So when you're growing in this, how many years would you say you were in? Is the word Satanism too light, or is that what it's called?
Well, that's what I originally, I would just say the occult.
The occult. How many years were you in
33.
the occult? 33 years. At any point, did you have a moment where you go, what in the world am I doing?
I did, and that was in 1987. I was in a Kettle Moraine Correctional Institution. Now, the guy who was living with me and my wife and did all these burglaries with me, we did time together. We were in Green Bay together, and then we got shipped to Kettle Moraine together. At that time, it was just a few months in Kettle Moraine, and I did this big ritual one time, and it constituted me shaving my head and growing and having a goatee. So I shaved my head and had a goatee, and if you knew how much I love my hair, to know that I did something like that would have freaked me out.
Well, it used to be long and flowing.
Very long, yeah. So I shaved my head and had a goatee, and that was just for a specific ritual. And I remember my friend, Scott, coming to me one day and saying, man, don't you think you're getting a little too deep in this stuff? And I said, listen, man, if Beelzebub came to me right now and told me to sacrifice my mother for him, I wouldn't even think twice about it. And that's the last day I ever saw Scott Vance and was his friend. He would not have anything to do with me after that. And I think the word got out to my mom about what I said, because it was at that point when my mom she didn't quit having anything to do with me and writing me, but she had to step back because she became fearful. And she still prayed. But that was the point in my life where I came back after that day into my room, and I was thinking to myself, what did I say? That's my mom. And that's when it went from, and this is how deceiving the enemy is, because no matter what it is, it's still him. Doesn't matter what tag, whether it's Wicca or whatever it is. No, it doesn't matter what tag you put on it. Dark magic, white magic, gray magic, Wicca, Satanism. It's all against God. It's all rebelliousness against God. God said in Samuel, he said, the sin of rebelliousness is as the sin of witchcraft. So I don't care if you think that I was bad because I was involved with Satanism and, worshiping God's enemy. He says that your rebellious attitude is the same thing. There's no difference. Mm-hmm. So it was at that point where there was a transition in my life where I quit, and it took time. It was over a period of time where I kind of started saying I need to put this hardcore, nasty stuff, because in my mind, the devil started having too much control over me, and I wanted control of myself.
Sure.
So I started walking the middle path eventually and started getting into Crowleyism. I don't know if you're familiar with Aleister Crowley. I was introduced to the Book of the Law, which was his main holy book in his religion of Thelema. And I started getting into his books and reading his material and getting into Crowleyism, and that's when I really started getting into the Ordo Templi Orientis and the AA and the Order of the Golden Dawn and the Holy Kabbalah and all this other stuff. So in my eyes, deceivingly enough,
mm-hmm.
in my eyes, I was out of the really bad stuff, and I was walking that middle path. I had control over the spirits instead of them having control over me. But yet every time there came a moment where somebody messed with me, whether it was a guard or a program director or an inmate or whoever it was, I went right back and pulled out the stuff that I didn't destroy and did destruction rituals, and it went right back into the mindset of asking the enemy to take care of business for me. So deceptively enough, and that's
mm-hmm.
Kind of the lines that I got the Wiccan pagan religious groups going on was through Wicca and Thelema, not Satanism. And that was accepted and approved because those are all recognized religions. And so,
when you were in the prison system, was it a continual thing, or were you released and got caught doing something and was sent back to another facility?
Yeah, my 27 years, there was 23 as an adult, 4 as a juvenile. As a juvenile, it was on and off.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't out very long in between the things that most of the time I didn't have, my mom and dad wouldn't take me back, so I just go to another facility. Prison was 2 big 10-year bits and then a bunch of smaller ones that I did. I was probably in prison 5 different times. 2 were big ones.
So what did you do when you were not in prison? And how long did it take you to get back in prison?
The longest I was ever out of prison was just, I think, 6 months to maybe a year.
So recidivism has your name.
Yeah, big time. Most of this is a power. I'll show you the power of addiction in the first place. Even those 10-year bits, every single day, all you think about is, I can't wait to get out of here to hit the pipe. That was my sole purpose of getting out, was to get back on the drugs.
Even though you knew that the drugs are
I was going to be better at it. I wasn't going to get caught this time.
Oh, well, sure.
Yeah, now I know better, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, so it never lasted long. I got right back into the game, right back into running an occult church out on the streets, the Tower High Sorcery Camp, and always ended up getting busted again.
Okay, they have programs. Everybody's got programs. One of them is to take someone out of prison, put them almost like in a different area. So you're not back with the friends. You're not bad with the bad influences. It's almost like the DNR. You got a bear that's causing problems. Mm-hmm. You trap it. You take it 50 miles away, and everything is fine. Yeah. Oftentimes, those bear come back. It'll take them a while, but they'll come back to their regular place. Would a program like this had worked for you? I don't even know if they figure it works now, but
absolutely not.
You can't, to me, it doesn't make any sense that you give somebody a new life and you relocate them and you buy them new clothes and you expect in here to change.
They want that change for you. You don't want the change.
No.
One of the questions students and teachers ask me sometimes when I speak in schools is, if somebody could have said or did something for you during that period of your life where you were caught up in addictions and stuff to help you get out, what would it have been? And it's like absolutely nothing. Why would I want to change? I was absolutely happy
Sure.
where I was in my life.
Because for once you were in control.
Yeah.
And people respected you.
Yeah.
Something you hadn't probably ever had.
Yeah.
But now you did. And you'd give that up. Why?
Yeah.
So was it always drugs that was the first thing you got back to and led to other things that got you thrown back into prison?
Well, the drugs were definitely a big part in it. It was always the drugs that led to the things that I did to get me incarcerated. Even if I wasn't arrested for the drugs itself, it was something as a result of the drugs. Like the second 10-year bit I did, I got 18 years for first degree aggravated assault with a weapon, attempted murder. I shot a man.
Yeah.
As much as I hated people, and had no respect for people, especially people who messed with me.
Yeah.
You didn't do that.
No.
I probably wouldn't have done something like that if I wasn't as out of my mind as I was on the crack cocaine at the time.
Exactly. It's not like you're going to be making rational decisions. No. Every time you got a sentence and the judge says, you're going to prison for the next whatever years, your attitude was?
I was one of those guys who always accepted responsibility for what I did. I never tried to lie or scheme my way out of any of my consequences.
It was what it was.
It was what it was, man. I accepted it. I didn't try to blame anybody else. I mean, other than in my mind, it was, obviously their fault that this happened. They created this monster.
Exactly.
But I always accepted my consequences.
Okay, prison. What's it like?
Hell.
In what way?
Well, in every way. I mean, you're not your own person. You get a number when you come in, and that's what you become.
A number.
And whatever that number is, you start to define that number when you get in. It's like, okay, I'm number 137,910. How is number 137,910 going to be? Who am I going to be in the other inmates' eyes and the guards' eyes? And that's different. You're not the same person to the guards as you are to the inmates, and you're not the same person to certain inmates that you are other inmates. But it's in every way. You got nothing in there. You are not your own person. You don't have your own life. You don't make your own decisions, other than just basic everyday things. You can make a decision whether or not you're going to sit in the hole or sit in your room. Make the decision whether you're going to tolerate this guy talking smack about you behind his back or not. You got those kinds of decisions. But then once you act on that decision, the consequences are that you're going to be locked up. You're going to be in the hole. I spent probably 4 years of my time in solitary confinement in those 23 years as an adult. And wasn't no joke. I did not like solitary confinement, but I was not afraid of going there either if I had to.
So when you get to prison, you are at everybody else's beck and call.
At the guards' beck and call, yep.
Is that to show they're authoritative, or is that to break you? You're nothing unless we tell you.
Yeah, well, the rules are put there to, obviously, for order, so there's not chaos in the prisons. But then there's guards that go way above and beyond that, and they got to have control over your lives. I think there's a few guards in every prison that are the same way I was when I was a kid trying to make myself in this world. And they grew up getting messed with and teased, and now here's their opportunity to put forth a thought.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they go above and beyond with that, and it's not a good thing.
There's been a recent news release that has said that so many prisons are so shorthanded.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, it's decent pay from what I've heard. I mean, this Brian Epstein thing, which has a lot of question marks around it. The guards were sleeping. There weren't enough. They didn't check on him. Right. And then they were saying how short-handed. Why do you think that is?
I'm not sure how that all worked. All I know is most all suicide watches I know about in prison or jail, they got cameras in the rooms. So I don't know why there wasn't.
Why do you think there's a shortage of people?
I don't know. It's always been that way ever since I started going into the system as an adult in the early 80s. There was a shortage of staff. I know it's even more radical now because there's even more inmates now. They're trying to cram as many people into the cells and stuff now that they can. And used to be single rooms, and now they're double rooms. Now there's triple rooms. Now they have barracks in almost every prison where they just pile people into this huge auditorium thing. They might have 100 bunk beds in there, 100 guys living in one nasty, stinking little room.
Yeah, and everybody knows that's going to work.
Yeah, of course it's
sure.
going to work.
You were mean. You were cruel. You were hurting. And your life didn't change. And then you met a man, an old guy. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was 2009. And I was probably out of prison for the longest I had been out of prison. I had gotten released from the shooting in 2006. So I got addicted to methamphetamine, a drug I said I would never touch. And it got me hook, line, and sinker. And I was to the point that probably the last 8 months before my arrest where I was suicidal. I was trying to kill myself by overdosing because I didn't have the courage to shoot myself.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to die. I was done with life. And when they arrested me, even as far gone as my mind was, I understood that these people that arrested me they saved me. They saved my life. And I remember even thanking the cop that cuffed me. I said, thank you. Because
Wow.
The night before that, I was actually partially dead, laying in a ditch, frozen almost to death in the middle of a blizzard, just the night before because of drugs. So I knew they saved me. And it was then, I was 44 years old. And with I got arrested for running a drug house, just got married to this girl who was 20 years younger than me. And after my mind cleared from the drugs after a while in the jail, I think that was the prodigal son moment where I came to myself. I didn't believe in Jesus and all that stuff, but I came to myself because I'm thinking, I'm 44 years old. What am I doing? Mm-hmm. I just, in the realization that I was married, not only was I married, but there was a 6-year-old autistic child in the picture. I didn't even have a clue.
You didn't even know she had a child.
It wasn't part of what I wanted in my life. I just wanted this young girl. You know what I'm saying? That was part of my badge of honor.
Sure.
Sure. Another notch on it. Young girl, 20 years younger, sexual fantasy in every way, and there's a kid. What?
Yeah.
So then just kind of. I think it allowed my mind to open up enough to look back on the last 33 years of my life up to that point and seeing just all the lives that I destroyed. Just all the chaos that I caused in people's lives and my mom.
Suddenly you came to that brick wall.
Yeah, I can't do this anymore. And it was at that point was the first time in my life I seriously wanted to try to change. And I understood that most of my problem was drugs. And it's the drugs. I got to do something about the drugs.
Yeah.
Not my religion.
No.
Not at all. I mean, which gave me permission to do the things I did.
Right.
But the drugs. But it was good enough. And it was there was this old guy, 74 years old, Cliff Walterstorff, who was the chaplain there, old senile, goody two-shoes. And I dealt with him before. That's some of the times I was in jail, and he was always the one that had to give me my occult materials, and the guards had to let me out of my room every day and put me in a solitary room to be able to practice my rituals because they didn't want me doing it in the cell with the rest of the guys.
Yeah, right.
It got quite loud. And so during this, I found out they had a faith-based drug and alcohol program that was 14 weeks long called the Almond Tree. And at first I didn't want nothing to do with it because it was God. There was God, and I didn't want nothing to do with these Jesus freaks.
Where were you in Satanism at this point?
I was there's a degree system in the Ordo Templi Orientis or Crowleyism, and you can't go through the initiation process while you're in prison. You have to do it when you're out. So I was only a second degree initiate, because I wasn't ever out long enough to go through their degree system. But I was involved in one of the camps in Milwaukee, the Isis Nephthys camp in Milwaukee, and it was like I was so far above these people. You know what I'm saying? I was so selfish and so far above them. I thought I was so much better, and I quit that and started my own thing. So I was pretty high. I was pretty well known in the occult circle. I was a big wig in the occult circle. I had to be, right? I mean, I worked toward that.
Well, yeah, that was your goal.
Yeah.
What did your occult heart tell your brain about this guy and chaplaincy?
Well, there was, Diane, I'd like to share. Out of all the things, I destroyed almost everything that was part of my past in a fire after my baptism. I kept one journal out of probably 30 of them that I had. I kept one. And I go through that now and then, and I see that there is a battle going on in my mind between, I had different names. Every initiation and stuff you go through, you take on different names. I was known as Beelzebub. I was known as Frater Oz. I was known all, and I could see these personalities, these different personalities come out in my journals battling that there was always this Frater Oz. It was light. Frater Oz was always my inner, I think my true self, the one that was involved with, the more mellow forms of the occult, like Buddhism and stuff. I was involved with Buddhism, the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and all that's, trying to find yourself and the great oneness of all and all that type of stuff, and you find your nirvana and blah, blah, blah. So there's always that struggle of wanting to be this pure guy, but the enemy would never let me go there. And there was that battle kind of going on in my head. It's like, I don't want to be this guy anymore. I want to be something better. I don't want to destroy people's lives anymore. I don't want this destruction of my life anymore. I just want to live a life, period.
But to be so drastic as to turn to God.
I know, right? But then there's that thought in my head. It's like, nope, don't go in there with these Jesus freaks and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But I did. I manned up, and I truly believe one of my favorite passages in Scripture is right away in Genesis. God created the heavens and the earth, and the Spirit of the Lord hovered over the darkness.
Yeah.
And I believe because we don't seek after God. Nobody seeks that. We don't. No. Somebody says, I found God. No, you didn't.
He found you.
He was never lost. Yeah. You're the one that got lost. You turned your back on him. And I believe it's obviously the Spirit that works in us, even before we have it in us, that makes us find him, pursue him. And I believe that was one of the times in my life where I got enough of that darkness off me, because Romans 1 tells us that we come to a point in our lives where we become so sinful that he's got to let his hands up off us and turn us over to ourselves. Yeah. Now there is no more morality that we're thinking about and all this and that. So I think that my mind being cleared enough to want something better. Sorry, I messed with your thing, Mr. Dryden. That he was able to put his hands back down on me, and that Spirit moved in me to go into this class. And all it took was, I think it was the second class. It was all about finding, you had to fill in the blanks with Scripture in this program. Okay. You went through a class, and then you had to take homework back, which was all Scripture, and fill in the blank. Up to that point, I was just opening up the Bible and trying to find these things. Going in the glossary, let's see, what is this?
Yeah, right.
Where does this? And one day I came across Psalm 51:7. It said, purge me with hyssop and I shall be clean. Wash me and I shall be whiter than snow. And it blew my mind, because I'm like looking at something that is part of our daily rituals in the occult, word for word. Like, what is this doing here? And the old man, old Cliff, was following me this whole time. And, he was talking to me, and I had respect for him because he stood up to me, for one thing.
Wow.
So I listened to him, and after I saw that in the Bible, I started reading the Bible. And I came across more stuff that was involved in our rituals, involved in Crowley's holy books, word for word. I'm like, what is this stuff doing here? Well, paganism was around long before Christianity. They stole this stuff from us, right? And that's when somebody threw The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel on my floor in my room one day, and I came back and I read that book, and as much as I didn't believe in God or believe Jesus existed and all that's a fairy tale stuff, when I got done reading that book, I was not stupid. I was a smart guy.
Yeah, you were.
After I got done reading that book, I could no longer deny the fact that with proof, 14 sources outside of Scripture, that this Jesus guy existed. He existed. If anything, I had to do something with that. If Jesus existed, what does the people say? He's either a really good guy, he's crazy, or he's who he says he is. Yeah. And between that and realizing through that book also that the Bible was the Word of God, and it was the same today as they had then, and it wasn't all this, like, because I believed in all those, things that the movies and books tell me that I read, that, you know, the Bible's been changed so much and they made the decision of what goes in and all that. I believed all that.
Well, and parts of it might be accurate, but not all of it.
Yeah, not all of it. Hey, you know, who's the Catholic Church is the one that takes it out and puts it in, and they got stuff hidden and all that crazy nonsense that people believe, because of course it's on TV, it must be true, right? or if someone says it on Facebook, it must be true.
Yeah,
Jeez, don't debate
Internet,
that.
No.
So after that, I think that twisted my mind enough to understand not only was this Jesus, did he exist, and this Bible is what it says it is, and it is what they had back then. But the things that I was reading in this Bible were things that I never heard before, or I did from maybe my mom, but never listened to because all the other negativity was kicking it out. And this God of love, this God that no matter what you do, I want you. Matter of fact, I'm going to die for you. I love you so much.
Yeah.
I took that for you. Give it to me. Why are you holding on to it? Just all this talk, and I wanted that so much. I wanted this man so much. And the only thing at the end that was holding me back, because this program every week was dealing with issues that I was struggling with, that all addicts struggle with. And one of them, it had 3 weeks on forgiveness. And I understood forgiveness after I went through the class. I understood forgiveness, that it wasn't about the person you were forgiving. It was about getting it off your back and letting it go. And even if they didn't forgive you, didn't matter. Your part's done. I understood forgiving others, being forgiven by others. But the thing holding me back was, how could God forgive me for all the things I said and did against him? Because I was like a Saul Paul in the occult, and I was the Saul guy. And whatever it took for me to try to take you up out of your Christianity, I was there, and I was good at what I did. Even if I couldn't get it to you in any other way, I would tell you what I would do with your Jesus if he was right now. I would bend, you know what I'm saying? Sexually. I don't care, just to get at you and to prove I can get at you. How could God forgive me for all those years of that?
Yeah.
And that's when Cliff came in once again, and I went to him right after I had that thought under the auspices of doing my 5th step, but he knew better. I got in there and he said, "What do you really want?" And I said, "I got this question.
This old geezer.
How can this God forgive me for all that?"
Right.
And he said, "You've been reading that Bible?" And I said, "Yeah." You read the part where it says, "As far as the east is from the west, you know how far that is?" I said, "There's no end." He goes, "Do you think in what you've read so far that God can forget anything?" I said, "No." And he goes, "But that's what he's saying to you. What are you talking about?" And it was that day on January 22nd, 2009, I got on my knees. And I've been all in since.
And found the love you had been looking for your entire life.
Yep. And don't have to be the big man anymore, because I serve the big man. I'm part of that kingdom.
When the Apostle Paul was blinded, called by God, blinded to get his attention, he got it back.
Yeah.
Nobody trusted him, because it's like, he wants to be one of us that follow Jesus. There's no way. Was transition difficult for you? I mean, Satan is losing one of his key players, and he's a really sore loser. Was it tough? Did people believe you? Did they trust you?
You know, I distinctly remember one time when I was in that last 6 months of my ERP program at Chippewa, and my mom was coming in to see me now and then, and we had been writing back and forth over that 18 months that I was locked up, writing scriptures back and forth, and, you know, my mom just loving it. And there was a guy who was not only a friend of our family, but he was part of the volunteers that went up to the Chippewa jail that helped me come to Christ. He was coming to visit me once in a while. So anyway, he was visiting me one day, and the guard came, said, "Your mom's here." So he had to leave. My mom came, and I found out later. My mom told me, or he told me. He said, "While I was walking out, I met your mom in the hallway, and she looked at me and she said, 'Do you think that he's being real, or is this another one of his cons?'"
Sure.
And so I wasn't one of those. So many people that I meet, I wasn't one of those guys who thought I had trust, that I deserved people's trust right away.
Good.
I understood I messed up my whole life, and if my mom or anybody else never trusted me again, I had that coming. I didn't have an expectation that anybody owed me anything.
Exactly.
I messed up, and I still have a lot of my family today won't have nothing to do with me. And you know what? I'm good with that. They got to deal with that on Judgment Day. It ain't my problem. It's their problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But my mom, you know, obviously it took her a while. My mom and my stepdad told me at that point, because I stole the gun from them to shoot this man with. And then I blamed my mom, because before I left, I knew what was going to happen. I gave my mom a bunch of my journals, and I said, I just want you to have these. If anything ever happens to me, you'll know who I am, what I'm about. And she ended up giving all that to the cops. And I blamed her. I'm like, you would do me like that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's always somebody else's fault.
Yeah, so she told me, and Pudge, she said, it's going to be a long time before we ever trust you again.
Exactly.
In life or out on our property.
Exactly.
But I tell you what, the Lord can restore all things. And within 3 months of my release, I was living out at my mom's place. So the Lord fixed even that.
You go into jails, you go into prisons, you have a ministry to people who are living a life like you did. Do you find that most of them have this same attitude? How could a God, love me? How could he forgive me? What do you tell them?
I don't think most have that attitude. I think most are kind of in the attitude. Most of the people I work with are in the attitude that I was in. And that's like, I want your help. They're happy where they're at. They come to me because either they get time out of the cell,
sure,
the PO or whatever tells them, go talk to this guy,
sure,
whatever it is. Most of the time I first started doing ministry, I'd talk to anybody, you know, parents especially. Will you talk to my kid? Will you talk to my kid? So I go and talk to him. But it got to the point where, you know, the kids just sit there like this, and what you tell them
glaze over,
and it makes them even madder at their parents and even more rebellious. So I don't do that no more. I let people know, if you want me to talk to them, it's got to be them wanting to talk to me, not because you want them to talk to me, because most of these people don't. I go into the jails up here in Ashland and Bayfield County to do one-on-ones with men and women, and most of the time, you know, just these people want to get out and talk to somebody. And they feel comfortable talking to me because I came from that lifestyle. And I don't take the Bible and I don't take Jesus' name and say, just stuck it down their throat.
Yeah.
I'm in there and I speak to them as one ex-con or one con to another. And I tell them, but Jesus comes up because he's such a big part of my life, and I know what the answer is. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not gonna throw that down their throat. I'm not gonna pour that out on them. I want to get people comfortable with me. You know what I'm saying? Let's talk about what's going on. Let's talk about your problems. Let's talk about what you want. What are your goals? All this and that. And now if you want this is what we can offer you. This is what I can offer you. I know what the answer is, and I want to show you that answer. But just like with this whole last couple of days, there's been, you know, I put something up about something that was in the newspaper up here in Ashland about the doctor, the psychologist, or whatever he calls himself in our area, that deals with drugs, and he likes to give drugs to people that help them get off their drugs, which is trading, you know, the methadone and all that to people.
Yeah, well, that'll work.
So anyway, it's the same thing with that. I know what the answer is. I know what the Bible says. The Bible says that drunkenness and drug addiction it's not a disease. It's a sin issue. Yeah, we all have a disease. It's called sin.
Yeah,
we're all born with it.
Yep.
You might call it homosexuality. You might call it drug addiction. Whatever it is, it's sin.
Yeah.
And we have to deal with that. And the world has a different system than the Christians do in how to deal with that. And even some Christians, they have one theology on Sunday and another theology the rest of the week about how to deal with that. But I know what my God says in his word, which is authority in life, and that is, hey, you got a sin issue. But I sent an answer for that sin issue.
Sure.
It's called Jesus Christ.
Right.
Come unto him, and you'll be set free. And who the Son set free indeed. However, I think people take this as I've got something against all the other ways. And you know what? I don't. I just know the way that not only works for us in this life, but eternally. Okay? And that's where my mind is. My mind is not just on fixing you right now, which I can't do, but my Jesus can. But this can fix you for eternity, and you'll be satisfied where you're going to end up. But I won't stop somebody from going to a worldly program or
exactly.
AA. I'll say, okay, well, here's what we offer. as Crossroads Outreach or what I do at the church with the running the Alma Tree program. Here's what we offer. It's Jesus-centered, Christ-centered. This is what we do. Well, I'm not really into that religious thing or whatever it is. Okay, well, let me refer you to, or here's AA and NA over here and all this. I ain't got a problem with that. Mm-hmm. I know that's not the answer.
Right.
It can be temporarily.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But like with everything else, Jesus is the answer, man. And I know what works. I know what works not just now. I know what works eternally. And that's my main purpose, is to get people saved and confident where they're going to end up when they die.
And I think the advantage that you have got over, say, someone who's raised in a loving Christian home and goes into these prisons, they have no idea, not even a clue. Yeah. Their wildest imagination couldn't give them insight to what you lived for years, and met a lot of people in prison.
And there is that. I don't want to get it, and because that holds a lot of people back from going into jails and prisons and working with addicts, because of maybe somebody like you. Well, I don't know nothing about that culture. I ain't got nothing to offer them. You're right, you don't. But we know the Holy Spirit does.
Yeah.
Chaplain Cliff never smoked, never drank, never cussed in his whole life. He didn't go. Obviously, he wasn't a jail chaplain thinking he had something to offer this guy, but he served the one who does have something to offer, and it was Chaplain Cliff, who never smoked, never drank, never cussed, never spent time in prison, who brought the light of Jesus Christ into my life. But yes, in certain aspects, people are probably going to tend more to either gravitate or listen to what I have to say over you, because I do have that experience, and we hear that all the time in the addictions world, right? With counselors who's never been caught up in addictions and stuff. These people don't even know what they're talking about. They went to school and they think they're going to tell me. There's people that have that attitude. Sure. Enter Brian Cole. Let me talk to him.
One of the things that I was always impressed that you did when you were going to the schools is you would have all the kids stand up. And what were some of the questions that you would ask these kids?
Whenever I go to schools, I always start out with 3 questions, because almost every school I go into, the staff or the upper staff have the attitude that, we don't have these kinds of problems in our school like other schools.
Of course not.
So this is just a precursor to, let me show you how wrong you are.
Yeah, it's
and
impactful.
How ignorant that
the
teachers are to what's going on in our children's lives. So the first question, what I'll do is, first everybody be sitting down, and I'll say, if this applies to you, stand up.
Oh, that's right.
And I'll say, if you know somebody that's either immediate family, close family, or a very good friend who's committed suicide, stand up.
And it's appalling.
That alone, in probably 75% of the schools, you have almost a quarter of the school at least standing up. And then when I say, for those of you who know somebody, immediate family, close family, or a very close friend who's suicidal right now, stand up. And if there ain't at least half or 3/4 of school standing up after that first question, it's rare. So I'll have them sit down, and I'll have everybody else stand up, and I'll go to my second question, which is, if you have a close family member, immediate family member, or a close friend who is caught up in addictions, whether it's alcohol, drugs, are involved now, sit down. And usually I don't even need to get to the third question when all but maybe a dozen students are standing up in that school just from those 2 questions. And then if I go on to the third one, which is if you have a close immediate family member, close family member, or a very close friend who is currently in jail, prison, on the bracelet, on probation or parole, whatever, sit down. There's usually nobody then by that time sitting down. I don't even need to go on to other questions.
And how old are these kids?
Most of them are almost all of them are middle and high school students.
Do you ever have school facility come up afterwards and go, I had no clue?
Oh, yeah.
Do they ever ask for the next step they could do? Or do they just figure, well, now that I know, we'll handle it?
Yeah, I don't think it's some of the schools, not very many, but some of the schools actually already have programs in their school, like after school or during school programs for students that are struggling with someone who committed suicide, have addicts as family members, as addicts, whatever. They actually have these things in schools already. It's so prevalent.
How sad.
Very sad. But otherwise, no, I've not had any teachers or principals or any anything like that ask me, what can we do? I used to, before the Freedom from Religion Foundation got after me, I used to invite students to call me, text me, email me, whatever it was,
Get
if
in
they
touch.
needed someone to talk to.
Sure.
I don't do that anymore because of that, because it's already hard enough to get into the schools with the pastor title. As a matter of fact, here's a great example. I just put up a post this week, about putting myself out there again and going to schools. One of the things that's cool about me is I don't charge any money other than asking for my gas to be refunded. I don't charge any money to go into the schools. But people look at my Facebook page, they see who I am, that I'm a pastor, and that alone will stop people from asking me to come in. So I had someone who saw that post, and she was the teachers or students, whatever, to bring speakers into the school. And she said, I'm very interested in getting you into our school. And it was in Wausau, so big school. And I've been in Wausau a lot, so I'd love to go to the Wausau school. So she's interested. Can you tell me what you talk about? I said, well, here's my phone number. If you can call me, we can talk about that. And then she wrote back a little later, I just looked at your Facebook page. We can't have that religious stuff in school. We can't have anybody talking about religion and all this and that in school. And I wrote her back. I sent her a link from one of the schools I spoke at. And I said, well, here's one of my presentations. I said, I don't talk about religion in schools. If I did, I wouldn't be able to go into the schools. I don't talk about religion. I don't talk about the politics. I don't talk about any of that. I talk about our kids' issues, man. And if you're that concerned about your kids, I'm the man to get in there. I've been through that. I know what the kids are going through. I was a youth pastor. I've been there, done that. I know what's going through their heads, man. I understand that we all deal with things in a different way. So even if you and I experience the same really bad thing happening in our life, we might deal with it differently, but we can still relate, right? The Bible tells us, man, we go through these things so we can help other people go through these things. And when a student, when these kids in the schools, when they're done listening to me, you wouldn't believe most kids today are not touchy-feely.
No.
All right, these kids are coming up and they're weeping and they're hugging me and they're just wanting someone to understand
somebody
and
to
love
care
them.
about them, love them.
Why would you deny the students that? You'd rather have some clown come in and do some tricks and tell jokes and do feats of strength. Bring me up in there. Let me tell them how it is, man. And let me tell them that there is something out there for them, that they are loved and more highly loved and valued than they will ever know.
Amen.
That they don't have to let what people say to them, like I did in my life, define the rest of their lives, man. Guess what? Here's a clue. No matter what clique you're in the school, whether it's jock or cheerleader or drug, whatever it is, no matter what clique you're in school or outside of school, somebody is going to mess with you. Somebody is going to bully you. Somebody's going to have bad things to say about you. So why not just be who you were created to be and deal with it and understand that we were created differently and uniquely for a reason. I don't want nobody to be like me. I don't want my wife to be like me. If I did, I certainly wouldn't love her, man. I can't understand why she loves me, let alone living with somebody like myself. Man, these kids are so unique and so talented, but they are so unloved. And parents are away working, even if they have both parents in their lives.
Exactly. Your ministry, your outreach has just exploded. You are everywhere. You are pastor of a church. You're always on Facebook. You're always where you're going, what you're doing, where you're speaking, who the music is. I mean, these are becoming huge things, I think, because you've hit the biggest nerve there is. And it's, wow, really? Somebody loves me? Unconditionally loves me? It's a sad place that we've become as a nation and as a people, but it is what it is. How do people get a hold of you?
Well, there's lots of ways you can get hold of me. And again, I just want to reiterate that there's people in the schools out there. I don't have anything to do with religion when I come into them schools.
Exactly.
It's dealing with the problems that the students are dealing with today. And there's plenty of stuff you can get on my YouTube channel. If you look up Brian Cole testimony or Brian Cole school presentation, that'll get you to my channel. Just click on Brian Cole. There's at least 3 or 4 school presentations in full length out there on my Facebook page.
That's
for the
COLE, Cole.
Cole, C-O-L-E. I do have a website, at setusfree.org, setusfree.org.
Okay.
And there's a part for the schools. Again, it'll look all religious-y because it is. I'm a Jesus freak. But if you go to my homepage and go to the very bottom of the homepage, there's a section for schools at the bottom of the homepage that has one or two of my links to the videos there. There's a whole, I have dozens in every school I've been to. I've gotten a recommendation. I mean, I've had teachers come up to me afterwards and telling me that they're going to school to become principals, and as soon as they become a principal, the first thing they're going to do is have me in their school. And even the best part is, man, one time when the Freedom from Religion Foundation was going against me from going into school, a bunch of students got on there on the comment link saying, "Why don't you leave this guy alone? He's just trying to help us." You know, I'm saying that blesses my heart. These kids want what they want, this love. They want this acceptance. So they can get on setusfree.org. There's a part for schools at the bottom of that with the school recommendations and stuff. They can get a hold of me they can email me at setusfree777@gmail.com, or they can even call me. I put my number out there to schools and everything. You call me at 715-491-7461 if you need someone to talk to. And, anyway, I'm on Facebook, Brian Cole. I have a ministry page. If you look up Brian Cole on Facebook, Brian Cole, I think it's motivational speaker, which I'm not a motivational speaker, but it was either that or public figure. You had to choose. And
right. There's really no category for you.
No,
definitely.
And plain guy that loves people, But if you look up Brian Cole, motivational speaker, and just hit like and follow on there, and I do daily devotionals and stuff for people,
and you are the DrydenWire pastor.
I am. That's pretty cool.
Every Sunday.
It's pretty wild because I know when it first started, boy, I had a lot of people hating on me, and I'm used to that. I don't care. I know Jesus loves me, just because I'm a religious nut. And but people had some pretty bad comments on those links for the weekly things that I was doing. But for the last probably year now, it's been pretty mellow, and nobody's really said nothing. I think they understand I'm not going to tolerate it. Number one, I'm not going to make a negative comment on that in the first place. So if you're trying to get that out of me, ain't going to happen. If you make negative statements and comments toward me, guess what? You're automatically on my prayer list. But I will. But if I find it's something that's legit, there was a legit question one of these guys that kept harping on the page about. He had a legit question one day, so guess what? I messaged him outside of the comment link, so there's no drama.
Right.
I messaged him and said, "Dude, if you seriously want to know about this, I'd love to talk to you about it." He called me. I gave him my number. He called me, and we talked. Hey, let's have some adult conversation.
Sure.
I don't mind debating, but I won't argue with you about something.
Exactly.
I'm not going to change your mind on Facebook.
You're probably one of the few. I mean, Facebook has become the national soapbox for I'm right, you're wrong.
Yep.
And here's why.
It almost sounds like a nonverbal prison, because these are the same things you hear in prison. People cutting on people all the time and talking smack. It's prison on Facebook. I'm like, wow, that's just like prison.
I don't think that motto is going to catch on, but, you can see that it is prison on Facebook. We've got to go. I cannot tell you how honored I was.
Oh, same here, man. Thank you, Diane.
It's going to be hard to beat this interview next week, but tune in again next week where we sit, we visit, we learn. Until then, keep it cooking.